Toys are something that every kid loves. No matter what generation you're from, you certainly had something that you will never forget. Some toys come and go, but the challenge is to come up with something that will last forever, at least in sales. In this video, we will take a look at some of the best-selling toys of all time. A Barbie doll is easily one of the most recognizable and best-selling toys of all time. They have sold well over 1 billion dolls since its release in 1959. That gives the Barbie doll some serious staying power that other dolls could only dream of. It was invented by Ruth Handler, who is the wife of Elliot Handler, and both of them were a couple of the co-founders of Mattel Toys. This little princess has been popular for many different generations, which is great for bringing mothers, daughters, and even grandmothers together. Many of these old Barbies and their accessories can be passed on to future offspring, and they never really go out of style. The yo-yo toy itself goes back to around 2,500 years ago, which makes it nearly impossible to try and figure out how many have been sold. But with that kind of longevity, how could we not talk about it? In the US market, they've been around since Pedro Flores opened the yo-yo manufacturing company in Santa Barbara, California in 1928. Donald F. Duncan knew a good thing when he saw it, and he purchased the business from Flores just 1 year later. That's when the Duncan yo-yo was born. Since that time, there have been close to 800 million units sold, and they have spun off a lot of imitators. But Duncan is synonymous with yo-yo. This is another toy that spans across multiple generations and is a great way to bond with each other. The Easy Bake Oven was inspired by street vendors, and it came out in 1963. It was designed to give children a chance to bake their own creations. Hasbro announced on their 50th anniversary that they had sold more than 30 million ovens, plus another 150 mix refills since it was released. The Easy Bake Oven has evolved over the years and has had several different designs to mimic what was found in actual kitchens. There is certainly no signs of slowing down in the Easy Bake market. The Radio Flyer is based out of Chicago, and it came into existence in 1917. It was developed by an Italian immigrant named Antonio Payson. Little did he know that he would create something that would last more than 100 years and is just as popular as ever. Radio Flyer has sold more than 100 million wagons, and they have branched off into all sorts of different toys that kids have loved. Silly Putty is something that was discovered by mistake in 1943 by a Scottish engineer named James Wright. He was working on trying to create a rubber alternative during World War II while working at the General Electric's laboratory in New Haven, Connecticut. Mr. Wright had combined boric acid and silicone oil in a test tube and was sort of perplexed on what happened. It was a complete failure as a rubber substitute, but he did ship it around to a number of engineers, hoping that there might be some use for his creation. Eventually, it landed in the hands of a businessman named Peter Hodgson, who knew it could be an instant hit. In 1950, Hodgson began marketing it as Silly Putty, and it was sold in little red plastic eggs. Kids instantly fell in love with this stuff, and in 1968, astronauts took it into orbit and used it to hold instruments in place. More than 300 million eggs of Silly Putty have been sold since it was released. Children may not have a comic section to copy like they once did, but this Silly Putty is still a popular toy for younger kids. Transformers are robots in disguise. They can shapeshift or transform into automobiles, aircrafts, insects, and more. These robots have only been around since the 1980s, but they took the world by storm. They absolutely took out a major competitor in the market in 1991, which was GoBots. The popularity of the toy line led to some successful cartoons, and later on some feature films were added, which has earned more than $3.7 billion in profits. The toys and movies have continued on, and now kids of the 80s have shared their love of these robots with their kids and grandkids. G.I. Joe, the great American hero, was introduced in 1964 by Hasbro as an 11.5-inch male figure that wore uniforms representing the U.S. military. To some, they may have resembled dolls, but they were called action figures. In fact, he was called Action Man in the UK because the term GI is not very common to use there. In 1982, Hasbro released the 3 3/4-inch figures, and it brought a whole new generation of G.I. Joe toy lovers. Since their initial release, they have sold more than 500 million action figures, as well as tons of other accessories and merchandise. There is no other action figure that has come close to those numbers. Hot Wheels were invented by Elliott Handler in 1968, who was the co-founder at Mattel Toys. His wife had already found tremendous success with the Barbie doll, and now the pressure was on him to find something for himself. He discovered his son playing with Matchbox cars and decided to create a line to compete with them. The Hot Wheel line had hot rod type cars with fancy paint jobs, big rear tires, superchargers, as well as other outlandish options. Since their release, they have gone on to produce more than 4 billion cars featuring 11,000 variations and 800 models. The cars have remained popular with both the young and the old. There are no signs of Hot Wheels slowing down anytime soon. In 1955, a 30-year-old electrician named Andre Casañez was installing a factory light switch plate and made some pencil markings on its translucent decal. After he peeled the decal from the switch plate, he noticed that the image transferred to the other side. This gave him the idea that it would become a children's drawing toy. Since its release in 1960, there have been well over 175 million Etch-A-Sketches sold worldwide. For many people, this will always be a beloved toy. Lego was derived from the Danish words for play well, and it was invented by a carpenter named Ole Christensen in 1949. The Lego company patented the idea just 9 years later. The original Lego were just red and white bricks that interlocked in a way that allowed children to build things without limits. Modern versions are a kit to build certain things and are more like a model kit or set. As of 2024, over 1.1 trillion Lego pieces have been produced. That is enough to give every person in the world an average of 140 Lego pieces. The Lego company remains as popular as ever, and there is something out there that is new all the time. Mr. Potato Head was created by George Lerner, who wanted to get kids interested in vegetables. Originally, they were just pieces that would stick into real potatoes or other vegetables like carrots and peppers. Mr. Potato Head was a groundbreaking toy in many ways. It was the first toy that had a dedicated television commercial, which made it a hot item. They earned more than $4 million in just a few months in the 1950s. No one had a clue how successful it would become, and it continues to be. It was released in 1952, and they have sold more than 100 million potato people since that time. The hula hoop is a toy that everyone knows about, and many people get frustrated with it because they can't hula. But those that can love it. The hula hoop came out in 1958 by the toy company Wham-O, and it became a national fad in the US. At that time, they sold more than 100 million units at $1.98 each. However, not long after that, the sales plummeted. It is the kind of toy that has its ups and downs, but today it is going around pretty steady. Star Wars toys have been sold for quite some time now. The original Kenner toy line from 1978 to 1985 is easily one of the best-selling toys of all time. Every kid wanted every figure and all of the accessories as well. Some of the figures, like the stormtroopers, you could never have enough. In that 7-year time period, Kenner sold more than 300 million action figures. Since that time, there have been numerous movies released, which has given way to even more figures and merchandise. These are the kind of toys that have been passed down for several generations, and both the young and the old are still interested in them. Must be the force at work. The Rubik's Cube was invented by a Hungarian man named Aaron Rubik in 1974. However, it wasn't licensed for sale as the Rubik's Cube toy until 1980. It became a huge part of the 80s, and more than 350 million cubes were sold in the early part of the decade. Some people can solve it, while others just get frustrated with it. This particular toy has not enjoyed the ongoing success that other toys have had, but every once in a while there is a little bit of resurgence. The Super Soaker was invented by a former NASA engineer named Lonnie Johnson in 1993. He took the classic water gun and then reinvented it. You can kind of say it was like a regular water gun on steroids. If you had one of these in a simple water gun fight, the odds were going to be in your favor. It could shoot up to 50 feet, and it completely changed the face of backyard water warfare. Since its release, there have been more than 250 million units sold, and that number will only continue to rise. These toys have solidified their place in history as some of the best toys ever produced. It's a dream of any toy maker to come out with the next big sensation. But that is always easier said than done. Have you ever had any of these toys? What were some of your favorites as a child? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching.